Good morning. This is Miss Nancy coming to you from the Upper Chichester Library in Upper Chichester, Pennsylvania. And it's time for story time for preschoolers. So I hope you're all ready to settle down and listen to a few stories after a nice long weekend. The first story I'm going to read to you is about, there are 5-minute short stories about Daniel Tiger. And I know that some of you probably watch Daniel Tiger on the TV. Well, this particular story that I have chosen today is called Daniel Tiger Tries a New Food. It was a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and Daniel Tiger and Tiggy were going on an adventure in the living room. "Let's go in our cave," said Daniel. But when Daniel crept over to the cave, he saw that someone was in there. Who was it? Oh, it was Daniel's dad. "Dad," Daniel giggled, "what are you doing?" "I'm not Dad. I'm a silly beast," said Dad. "Well, I caught you, you silly beast," said Daniel, hugging Dad tightly. It's always fun to play games with your dad, isn't it? Daniel's mom came into the living room. "Daniel, my little adventurer," said Mom, "do you want to help me make something in the kitchen?" Daniel jumped up happily. "Okay, Mom. I like being a big helper." And perhaps I hope you guys like being a helper to your moms too in the kitchen. In the kitchen, Daniel and Mom got ready to cook up a special treat. "Since Miss Elena is coming over for dinner tonight, I'm making a new dessert," said Mom. "It's called banana swirl." "Banana swirl," said Daniel. "What is that?" "Well, I put these bananas in the freezer," Mom said. "Brr," said Daniel. "They'll get cold." "And now we put the bananas into the blender, put the top on, and press." "Go," said Daniel as he pushed the button with Mom. The bananas swirled around and around in the blender. "Okay, they're done," said Mom as she turned off the blender. "Wow," said Daniel. "They don't look like bananas anymore at all." Mom dipped a spoon into the banana swirl and held it out to Daniel. Daniel wasn't sure he wanted to try the banana swirl. "What if I don't like it?" he asked. "It's true, you might not like it," said Mom, "but it might taste smushy yummy. Try a new food and it might taste really good." "Okay," said Daniel, "I'll try." And very slowly he took a little bite and he liked it. "It's swirly, banana-y, it's cold and sweet, and it kind of tastes like banana ice cream," said Daniel, grinning. "I think I like banana swirl." "I'm glad you tried it," said Mom. Ding dong, the doorbell rang. "Miss Elena's here," exclaimed Dad happily. Daniel ran to the living room. "Hiya, Toot," said Miss Elena. "I'll call you when dinner is ready," Mom said from the kitchen. Daniel and Miss Elena went over to Daniel's cave. "Let's pretend we're on an adventure," he whispered, "and we're looking for a silly beast." "I think I saw a silly beast over there in that cave," exclaimed Miss Elena. "It's Tiggy." That gave Daniel an idea. He imagined that Tiggy was a beast deep in the jungle. "Dinner time," Dad called. At the dinner table, Mom was serving spaghetti, but it didn't have regular tomato sauce on it. "This is something new," said Mom as she scooped a big helping onto each plate. "It's called veggie spaghetti. These veggies go on top of the spaghetti." Daniel looked closely at his plate. "I don't think I like veggie spaghetti, he said. But you've never tried veggie spaghetti, Mom said. Daniel looked at the new food again. That's true, he said. I never tried it. Daniel turned to Miss Elena, who was about to take a bite. What do you think? Well, Toots, said Miss Elena, at my house we always try a new food because it might taste really good. We say that at my house too, Daniel said, smiling. And Miss Elena and Daniel both took a little bite, and Daniel liked it. It's crunchy and munchy, Daniel said with a smile. Veggie spaghetti is really good. But what about Miss Elena? It's not my favorite, said Miss Elena. But can I please have extra carrots? I just love, love, love carrots. Absolutely, said Mom Tiger. I'm glad you both tried something new. Me too, said Daniel as he ate more veggie spaghetti. After they finished their dinner, it was time for a special dessert. What Daniel and Mom had made together. Who wants banana swirl? Asked Mom. I do, said Daniel. And I do too, said Miss Elena. Banana swirl, said Dad, but I've never had banana swirl before. What if I don't like it? Try new food, it might taste good, said Daniel, and Miss Elena were giggling. So Dad took a little bite, and he liked it. Banana swirl is smushy yummy, said Dad. I'm glad I've tried it. Me too, said Daniel. I liked trying banana swirl and veggie spaghetti at dinner. Have you ever tried a new food? Try a new food. It might be really good. Ugga mugga. And that's goodbye from Daniel Tiger for today. There are more stories in this book that I will read to you at other times. Now, this is one book we don't currently have in the library. It's one that I have for my grandson, Oscar. But I thought you might enjoy a story about Daniel Tiger. Now, the next story that I'm going to read to you is available at the library, and it's called A Noisy Neighbor. And it's really based on the Bambi stories. This is one of those Walt Disney Storytime treasures. And this is all about Bambi and his noisy neighbor. One of the things I like about these Disney books is they have wonderful illustrations. It was spring, and Bambi was chasing butterflies. He chased them through the trees and into the meadows where they landed on all of the flowers. Hello, Bambi, said one of the flowers. Surprised, Bambi stumbled backward, landing with a plop on his fluffy tail. The flower danced and wiggled, and finally a nose popped out. The nose belonged to Flower the skunk. Hello, Bambi, he repeated. Want to play hide and seek? Before Bambi could even answer, Thumper came hopping through the meadow. You're it, he exclaimed, tagging Flower. Then he turned to Bambi and said, Come on, let's go hide. Bambi followed Thumper across the stream to a low hill where Thumper's family lived. Flower will never find us in here, said the little rabbit. Follow me, and with that, Thumper disappeared down a hole, forgetting Bambi, who was a little bit too big to fit in. That's a hole that looks like it would fit a rabbit, but not a baby deer. Bambi tried to follow, but only got as far as his ears. A moment later, he felt a cold nose nudging his shoulder. You're it, said Flower. Just then, Thumper popped out of the hole. I'm tired of hide and seek, he said. Let's do something else. Like what? Asked Bambi. Thumper grinned. We can thump, and I know just the place to do it. Thumper led them to his favorite spot in the forest, a hollow log that was perfect for thumping. But as they drew near, the three friends heard a loud thud that echoed through the forest. It was followed by another, and then another, and another. Peering out through the tall grass, they saw a beaver near the hollow log. And here's the beaver. See, he has a very broad tail. And as they watched, he raised his tail and he smacked it down on the log, just like it was a drum. Bambi and Flower watched, enjoying the concert, but Thumper was not pleased. He scurried into the clearing and complained, "Excuse me, that's my log." "Oh, but who are you?" asked the beaver. "They call me Thumper, and here's why." He hopped onto the log and he thumped it hard with his foot. The beaver replied, "Well, I'm glad to meet you, Thumper. I'm Edgar." And with that, the beaver gave the log a good whack with his tail and disappeared into the trees. The next day, Bambi, Flower, and Thumper were romping through the woods when they spotted Edgar up ahead. The beaver was scurrying along, collecting branches and twigs. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Thumper asked him. "Well, I'm gathering supplies," Edgar replied pleasantly. "Well," Thumper replied, "you can't just go around taking them all like that." "Then I'll take them like this," Edgar replied. Gripping the branches in his teeth, he walked off. Later that afternoon, Bambi, Thumper, and Flower headed down to the stream to play. As they approached, they heard a crash. Hurrying to see what had happened, they saw that a tree was stretched all the way across the water. Standing next to it was, you guessed it, it was Edgar. And we know that beavers make dams out of branches and trees that they're able to chop down with their very sharp teeth. Now, what's he doing?" Thumper asked. "I think he chopped down that tree with his teeth," said Flower. "Oh, he can't do that," Thumper said. "He'd destroy the woods." "Oh, I know what he's doing," said Bambi. "Edgar's building a house. Beavers make their houses of sticks and logs and mud. They're built across streams and rivers so that they become dams. Friend Owl told me all about it." "What's a dam?" asked Flower. Bambi said, "It's something that blocks the water. When the water slows down, it makes a pond." "Well, whatever it is, I don't like it," said Thumper, as he stomped off into the forest. "I don't like it one bit." As the days passed, the dam grew bigger and bigger, but so did the pond. Bambi and Flower went there often to splash and play in the pond, but not with Thumper. He just sat by his house, grumbling and watching his friends. Then one rainy night, Thumper and his family were asleep inside their house, deep beneath the ground. Suddenly, they were awakened by a very loud thud. The others couldn't figure out what the noise was, but Thumper knew what it was right away. Hopping mad, Thumper hurried outside, where he found Edgar slapping his tail on a hollow log over and over again. "What do you mean, waking us all up like that?" Thumper demanded. "I was trying to warn you," said Edgar. "The rain made the pond rise, and it's almost to your door. It could flood out his den." Bambi and Flower had also heard the alarm. Oh, excuse me. Skipped a page there. Looking down, Thumper saw that Edgar was right. The pond had grown into a lake, and with every passing moment, it was inching higher and higher up the hill. Thumper leapt into action, and he dove into the burrow and called to his family, "The water's rising, we have to leave, hurry." Within minutes, he had rounded up the entire group and had led them safely to a nearby hilltop. Bambi and Flower, who had also heard the alarm, found Edgar at the door of Thumper's house. The beaver was busy building a wall of sticks and mud to keep out the water. I don't think it's going to be enough, Bambi said. The water is rising way too fast. Flower shook her head sadly. Poor Thumper, his house will be ruined. Maybe not, said Edgar. I have an idea. Edgar jumped into the water and swam across the dam. He began digging through it at once, scooping out mud and chewing through sticks and bark as fast as he could. When Bambi saw what Edgar was doing, he raced around to the other side of the pond. Scrambling out into the dam, he pawed at it with his hoofs. He was trying to help Edgar tear a hole through the wall. Meanwhile, the pond rose higher and higher. The water was just inches from the front door of Thumper's house when Edgar and Bambi finally broke a hole in the dam. Water began to flow through it, and the pond grew smaller. In no time at all, Thumper's house was out of danger. Bambi and Edgar let out a sigh of relief. Well, we did it, Bambi said. We did it together. Suddenly, the dam shriveled beneath them. The force of the water was making the hole wider and bigger. And Edgar realized the dam might soon come apart. Bambi, cried Edgar, here, follow me. Edgar scrambled up beside Bambi, leading him away from the hole and across the dam. Bambi stumbled, but Edgar helped him to his feet, and the two of them just kept on moving together. When they reached the other side, Edgar and Bambi leapt to safety. As they did, the dam broke. It broke apart in a dozen places. With a loud roar, it went washing down stream in a jumble of sticks and logs. Bambi and Edgar joined the others on the high ground and watched the last of Edgar's house float down the stream. Edgar turned to Thumper and said, I built the dam too close to your house. Please forgive me. I'm afraid I haven't been a very good neighbor. Well, you rescued my family, said Thumper. Then you tore down your own house to save mine. You're the best neighbor ever. I'm the one who hasn't been a good neighbor, Thumper added. I should have welcomed you to the neighborhood long ago, but I didn't. And you helped me anyway. How can I ever thank you? I know how, said Bambi. The next day, Edgar began building a new house, further downstream this time. Right there beside him were Thumper, Flower, and Bambi, collecting twigs and branches and carrying them to the stream and helping Edgar pack them together to form a new dam. You see how the little animals are carrying the branches in their mouths to Edgar so he can build a new dam. After a few hours, they stopped to take a break. After all, they'd been working very hard. When they did, Thumper hopped onto a log and began thumping it with his foot. It sounds good, said Thumper, but I think something is missing. He smiled at Edgar, who jumped up beside him and pounded the log with his tail. A loud thumping echoed throughout the forest. Thumper joined in, and soon the woods were filled with a happy rhythm, a neighborly beat that was part thump and part thud, part welcome and part thank you. And we need to remember that good neighbors are friendly. Good neighbors are sweet. They try to make friends with all the people they meet. So if you're out playing and see someone new, be sure to welcome them and say, how do you do? Now I'm just going to have a little sip of water because sometimes my throat gets dry when I'm reading stories. So, the last story I'm going to read is called The Runaway Wand. And this story is about a little girl who took something without permission. And we'll find out what happens. Again, it's from the Disney Storytime Treasures Library, and it's called The Runaway Wand. And we're talking about a young lady named Cinderella. You may have heard Cinderella stories before, and this is just a little short story from her life. It was the morning after the ball, and Cinderella was dreaming. It was a wonderful dream, filled with music and laughter and dancers gliding across a ballroom floor. One of the dancers was especially handsome. As he turned towards Cinderella, she saw that it was a prince. He smiled and held out his hand. "Cinderella," he squeaked. Cinderella opened her eyes. There, perched on the bed, were her friends, Jacques the Mouse. It was his job to wake her up early every morning so she could do her morning chores. "Sorry to bother you, Cinderella," he chattered, "but Rook is so happy." "Yeah," sighed Gus, who was right behind him. "Happy, happy." "Oh, it's all right," said Cinderella. "You were just doing your job. Besides, every dream has to come to an end." Cinderella climbed out of bed, and the mice and the birds brought out her clothes. She sang a tune as she put on the clothes and then went down to clean the courtyard and scrub the floors. Jacques and Gus, meanwhile, went to take a morning bath in the fountains. "Zook, zook, Gus," Jacques said, "over by the bench. That's a big sparkly thing." Gus perked up. "Pretty, pretty." Let's see what they're going to see. The two mice scurried over to investigate. There, beside the bench, was Fairy Godmother's magic wand, left behind the night before. You see, there are little sparkles coming off it. Gus hopped up and down with excitement. "Zuck, zuck! Magic! Let's do tricks!" "Don't know, Gus, Jacques replied. "Wand not ours. Need to ask permission." "Permission?" asked Gus. "What permission?" Jacques explained. "When something belongs to someone else, need to ask permission to use." And I'm sure your mothers have all said that to you. "This wand belongs to the nice lady last night," said Gus. "What words?" she said. "Bibbidi-dibbidi-bobbidi-bam." Jacques laughed. "Bibbidi-dibbidi-bobbidi-boo." So he spoke the magic, and the wand started to glow. The air shimmered around them, and suddenly, where Jacques and Gus had stood just a moment before, two coach horses were pawing the ground. The horses looked for the coach they had pulled the night before, but there was no coach in sight, so they set off through the fields to explore. Jacques and Gus raced across the countryside, enjoying their newfound size and speed. They leaped fences, swam rivers, and climbed hills. They grazed in the grass, but soon they grew tired of adventure and headed home to look for their friend Cinderella. They found her sweeping the courtyard and galloped over to greet her. But, not used to being so big, they bumped into the trellises and knocked over flower pots. Before they knew it, the courtyard was a mess. Cinderella, of course, didn't recognize her friends. She didn't realize the horses were the little mice. All she saw was that she now had more work ahead of her. "Please go," she told the horses. "Shoo!" She waved her broom at them, and Gus and Jacques fled. Jacques and Gus retreated to the garden, this time being careful not to bump into anything. Looking around, Jacques saw the magic wand lying in the grass. Leaning over, he picked it up very carefully in his mouth. As he did, the wand began to quiver and rattle against his teeth. Jacques let out a frightened whinny and dropped the wand. By the time it hit the ground, His whinny had become a buzz, and they had changed into 2 bees. Delighted to be flying, Jacques flitted through the garden, taking in all the wonderful sights and smells. Suddenly he stopped. What had happened to Gus? Gus buzzed back among the flowers, looking for his friend. Finally, at the very edge of the garden, he saw a chubby bee clinging to the face of a giant sunflower, eating great chunks of pollen. Well, it was Gus, and that's what bees eat. They eat the pollen from the center of flowers. From an open window came the screechy voices of Anastasia, one of Cinderella's wicked stepsisters. Gus and Jacques grinned at each other and took off flying toward the house. They buzzed through the second-story window and found Anastasia lounging in bed. "Cinderella," Drizella yelled from next door, "how are we supposed to get up when you haven't brought our breakfast to us yet?" Her stepsisters are rather lazy and make Cinderella do all the work. Jacques and Gus flew high above the beds and began diving at Anastasia. "Bees!" she shrieked. "I hate bees!" Jumping from beneath the covers, she raced to her sister's room, with Jacques and Gus buzzing happily along behind them. The two sisters ran about frantically, crashing into furniture and knocking pictures off the wall. When Cinderella arrived a moment later, Drizella swatted at the air, screaming, "Get rid of these nasty pests and clean up this mess." Then the sisters ran from the room and slammed the door, leaving Cinderella alone with the bees. Cinderella turned to the bees. "Well, you're awfully cute," she said, "but you've caused me a lot of trouble." With that, she shooed them outside and closed the window behind them. The bees buzzed back to the garden and landed by the magic wand. Before they knew it, Jacques and Gus had changed once again, and this time they had turned into bulldogs. Jacques and Gus circled the garden looking for something a bulldog might want to do. They spied Lucifer the cat sunning himself on a garden wall. I wonder what they're going to do to the cat. Barking gleefully, they charged Lucifer. For once, the big lazy cat moved quickly. He leaped from the wall and ran into the cellar, with Jacques and Gus snapping at his heels. They chased Lucifer through a pile of ashes, then up the stairs and into the house. Lucifer and the bulldogs raced from room to room, leaving black paw prints wherever they ran. They ran to the parlor where Cinderella had just finished scrubbing the floor. Screeching with fear, Lucifer threw himself into Cinderella's arms, upsetting her bucket of water and knocking her over. "Now look what you've done," said Cinderella. Get out, you mean old dogs." Jacques and Gus tried to explain, but all they could manage were pathetic whimpers. Finally, they crept outside, and their tails were drooping. Cinderella went through the house, taking stock of all the damage. There were paw prints everywhere. Her stepsister's rooms were a wreck, and the courtyard might never, ever be the same. Overcome with despair, she went to the garden and began to cry. "Can I help you, dear?" asked a kindly voice. Cinderella turned around, and there was her fairy godmother. "Oh, fairy godmother, it's all so hopeless," she said, dabbing her eyes. Cinderella described what had happened, and the fairy godmother nodded sadly. "I'm afraid it's been a bad day for me too," she said. "I seem to have lost my magic wand." Well, we know where the magic wand is, though, don't we? The two bulldogs came crawling out from behind the bushes, carrying the magic wand. They dropped it in front of the fairy godmother. "Oh, it's those awful dogs!" exclaimed Cinderella. The fairy godmother scratched her chin. I wonder. Lifting the wand, she waved it, saying, Biddity, biddity, bobbity, boo. The air sparkled, and suddenly the bulldogs turned back into the mice, Gus and Jacques. Gus, Jacques, said Cinderella, that was you? Jacques nodded unhappily. Horses, too, he said, and bees. Sorry we made such a mess, Cinderella. You know, said the fairy godmother, I might have to let you use the wand. I might have let you use the wand if only you had asked permission. Jacques brightened. Permission? Really? How about we try one more time? We could fix things. What's the magic word? Asked the fairy godmother. Bibbidi bobbidi boo, said Jacques. Not this time, she replied. Guess again. Gus hopped up and down. Zuck, zuck, he cried. Magic word, please. The magic wand trembled, and a ball of light appeared over their heads. It swept out of the garden, across the courtyard, through the window, into the bedroom, and all around the house, cleaning as it went. Here's the magic, cleaning the house as it went. Soon all the mess was gone. Wow, squealed Jacques, that was magic. And if you have a magic wand, here's what you have to do. Make a wish and say the words, bibbidi bobbidi boo. But to ask permission, here's all you ever need. The little phrase, please, may I? 'Cause it's magical indeed. So it's important to ask permission to use other people's things. I hope you enjoyed these stories today. And before I go, I want to remind you about a few things that are still happening on Tuesday, which is tomorrow. Mr. Andrew will still be in the park, the Kingsman Park, where he will read stories and sing songs with you. It's the last Tuesday he'll be doing this with you in the park. Then in the evening at 6:30, there will be an ice cream social up at Fury Road Center. And it's the municipal building. And Mr. Andrew will be there with his music as well. And there will be lots of ice cream, free ice cream for everybody to come and enjoy. And it's coming from the new ice cream shop, right, which is very close to the library, called the Blue Cherry Ice Cream. And I do want to mention a fundraiser that is coming up in August. It will be August 8, 1 to 4 p.m. at the Ballroom at Bethel, 3737 Falk Road, and that's in Garnet Valley. It's $55 a ticket for all you can eat Crab Fest. There's plenty of other kinds of food there as well as crabs. At a meeting that I just recently attended, most of the tickets have already been sold. There were about 13 tickets left. So if you're interested in this fundraiser to help us get money to eventually build a new library and also to enjoy for yourself a delicious meal on a nice August afternoon, come to the library and buy your ticket. Goodbye for today. See you next week.